Napoleon then said that notwithstanding the occupation of Paris by the Allies, he should still have succeeded had it not been for the treachery of Marmont and have driven them out of France. His plan was arranged. He was to have entered Paris in the dead of night. The whole of the canaille of the city were at the same time to attack the Allies from the houses, who, fighting against troops acquainted with the localities, would have been cut to pieces and obliged to abandon the city with immense loss. The canaille were all ready. I think he also said that he would have cut off the Allies from their park of artillery. Once driven from Paris, the mass of the nation would have risen against them. I mentioned this plan, added he, to Baron Kohler, who admitted the danger of it. Marmont will be an object of horror to posterity as long as France exists. The name of Marmont will not be mentioned without shuddering. He feels it, added Napoleon, and is at this moment probably the most miserable man in existence. He cannot forgive himself, and he will terminate his life like Judas. I took the liberty of asking what he considered to be the happiest time in his life since his elevation to the throne. The march from Cannes to Paris, was his reply. When Castlereagh was at Châtillon with the ambassadors of the Allied powers after some success of mine, and when I had, in a manner, invested the town, he was greatly alarmed lest I might seize and make him a prisoner, not being accredited as an ambassador, nor invested with any diplomatic character to France. I might have taken him as an enemy. He went to Caulaincourt, to whom he mentioned that he labored under considerable apprehensions that I should cause violent hands to be laid upon him, as he acknowledged I had right to do. It was impossible for him to get away without falling in with my troops. Caulaincourt replied that as far as his own opinion went, he would say that I would not meddle with him, but that he could not answer for what I might do. Immediately after, Caulaincourt wrote to me what Castlereagh had said. In his own answer, I signified to him in reply that he was to tell Lord Castlereagh to make his mind easy and to stay where he was, that I would consider him as an ambassador. At Châtillon, continued he, when speaking about the liberty enjoyed in England, Castlereagh observed, in a contemptuous manner, that it was not the thing most to be esteemed in your country, that it was a usage which they were obliged to put up with, but had become an abuse and would not answer for other countries. I ventured to express my surprise to Napoleon that the Empress Marie Louise had not made some exertion in his behalf. I believe, replied the Emperor, that Marie Louise is just as much a state prisoner as I am myself, except that more attention is paid to decorum and the restraints imposed upon her. I have always had occasion to praise the conduct of my good Louise, and I believe that it is totally out of her power to assist me. Moreover, she is young and timorous. It was perhaps misfortune to me that I had not married a sister of the Emperor Alexander, as proposed to me by Alexander himself at Erfurt. But there were inconveniences in that union arising from her religion. I did not like to allow a Russian priest to be the confessor of my wife, as I considered that he would have been a spy in the Tuileries for Alexander. It has been said that my union with Marie Louise was made a stipulation in the treaty with Austria, which is not true. I should have spurned the idea. It was proposed by the Emperor Francis himself and by Metternich to Narbonne. Of all the ambassadors I ever employed, added Napoleon, Narbonne was the ablest. He had beaucoup d'esprit, and his moral character was unexceptionable. While he was at Vienna, France was never duped by Metternich as she had been before. He penetrated Metternich's projects in a few days. Had such a man as Narbonne been sent to Alexander in 1812, it is probable that peace would have been made. Russian demanded Danzig and an indemnification for the Duke of Oldenburg. Romanzoff persuaded Alexander that I would make any sacrifices to avoid war, and that the favorable moment for him to make demands had arrived. After the first success I had gained, Alexander sent a message to me that if I would quit his territory and retreat to Niemen, he would treat with me. However, I did not believe that he was of good faith and judged it to be a ruse. Otherwise, we might have treated in person at Vilna and settled everything. 23rd. Yesterday, Mr. Smithers, midshipman of the Conqueror, came up to Longwood with a passenger, Sir Hudson Lowe, to go to Calpatrans. After having passed the guard room at the entrance, he was called back by the officer and told that his pass was found to be for the 21st, and consequently he could not be permitted to enter, as the date of the passport had expired the day before. At no greater distance of time, and last Tuesday, Sir Hudson Lowe manifested great ill humor towards me for having presumed to assert that he sometimes had given passes in which the day was specified, and related to him a very strong instance in that of Mr. Urmston. His Excellency also officially denied the fact to Calpatran. Previous to Mr. Smithers being permitted to come up, he was subjected to a long interrogation upon the nature of his business there, how he knew the Bertrands, that he surely must have some letters to them from Captain Hamilton of the Navy, and many other indications of suspicion and distrust of an officer high in rank. General Gourgaud informed me this day that at the close of the Battle of Waterloo, when the charge made by the French had failed and the English charged in their turn, a part of the cavalry of the latter, with some of the tirailleurs intermingled with them, approached to within 100 or 150 toises of the spot where the emperor was standing, with only Soult-Dru Bertrand and himself. Close to them was a small battalion drawn up in a square. Napoleon ordered Gourgaud to fire some shots from 2 or 3 field pieces which belonged to the battalion, to drive away the cavalry which were approaching nearer. This was put into execution, and one of those shots carried away the Marquis of Anglesea's leg. Napoleon then placed himself within the column and wanted to charge, exclaiming, "Il faut mourir ici, il faut mourir sur le champ de bataille. I have to die here." At this time, the English tirailleurs were firing at them, and they expected every moment to be charged. Le Baudoyer was galloping about like a madman, with his arms extended before him, seeking to be killed. Napoleon was prevented from throwing himself amongst the enemy by Soult, who laid hold of the bridle, exclaiming that he would not be killed but taken prisoner, and with the aid of the others finally succeeded in compelling him to leave the field. At the time, there was none other than the above-mentioned small column to oppose the Prussians, who were advancing. Napoleon was so fatigued that on the road to Jemappes and Philippeville he would have frequently fallen from his horse had he not been supported by Gourgaud and 2 others, who were the only persons with him for some time. He was silent for a long time. When on the road to Paris, it was decided at one moment that the emperor should, instantly on his arrival, go booted and spurred to the Senate, which would have had a great effect, but this resolution, unfortunately, was not acted upon. The 24th, went to Plantation House, where, as customary, I had to suffer a long interrogation and much ill humor, amongst other matters. His Excellency, after asking how I came to know that Cipriani had a conversation with him relative to the deficiencies at Longwood, said that I had no business to have any conversation with the maitre d'hotel of Longwood concerning the provisions allowed, that in everything not strictly medical, I was to ask him what I was to be permitted to do, that I was not to use my own discretion or judgment with respect to any conversation with General Bonaparte, not medical, or reply to his questions, unless I made such communications known to him, as he, the governor, was the only judge of their propriety. I replied that if he expected me to communicate to him the conversations I held with Napoleon, he was mistaken, that with the exception of what I had frequently stated to him before, I should be silent, that according to the doctrine he laid down, I must communicate to him all that passed. By his own words, I had no right to employ my own judgment or discretion, and consequently must tell him everything, as retaining any part of the conversation would be an exercise of my judgment. He shuffled for a while in reply to this, and brought the old threadbare subject of the Scotch newspaper again on the carpet. Had some conversation with Napoleon about Lord Castlereagh. Never yet, said he, has there been so much political imbecility displayed by man, as there has been by Lord Castlereagh, a king is forced upon the throne contrary to the wishes and to the opinion of the people, and then, as a mode of ingratiating himself with that people and of conciliating them, he is compelled to make them pay contributions ruinous to the country. They have made the Bourbons le bureau de leur peuple, murderers of their people, of the Vendéans and others who have bled for them, and by whose means they gained the Battle of Waterloo. For had it not been for that business in La Vendée, I should have had 30,000 men more at Waterloo. Then again, those Bourbons have made a concordat with the Pope, which would not have answered in the 10th or 15th century. They have agreed to establish by degrees all the laws of the Church. What does this mean? But the suppression of Protestantism and of all other religions except the Roman Catholic. You know that the Roman doctrine is that out of the pale of the Church no one can be saved. It is, in fact, reestablishing all the old bigotry, superstition, and even the Inquisition, as that was one of the laws of the Church. The Protestants must see that the intention of this concordat is to deprive them of the liberty of worship and to tolerate no religion but the Roman Catholic. The proprietors of national domains that once belonged to the Church must tremble as it leads to the restitution of them. The Protestants will be worse than before the Revolution, at which time, if one of them wanted to marry, he was obliged to say he was Catholic, though their churches were then in a manner tolerated. Yet if they frequently opened them, they were visited and tormented by the police. That Pretaccio has been imbecile enough to give his consent to a measure that will ultimately cause the assassination of the priests. At one time, I had myself the greatest difficulty in preventing the people from accomplishing it. Oh, those Bourbons. Well, may the French say, is no rien appris, is no rien oublié. They haven't learned anything, and they haven't forgotten anything. They rest upon a sleeping lion. I see France in a flame. I see rivers of blood flowing. You will behold the general massacre of the Bourbons take place. The old noblesse, the priests, and many an innocent Englishman and friend to liberty will pay the forfeit of his life to expiate the wicked policy of Lord Castlereagh. The imagination always exceeds the reality, and the great latitude given in the Concordat to the king and to the princes to revive all the ancient superstition and intolerance will set France in a flame and produce another revolution of bonnet rouge and à la balicolotte. The 25th, Napoleon, in high spirits, saw him in the drawing room dressed in a gray double-breasted coat. He was very facetious in his remarks about the governors of Anguilla and the Cape Verde Islands. Had some conversation with him relative to Spain. I asked if it were true that the Queen had said to Ferdinand in his presence that he was her son, but not the son of the king, thus proclaiming her own infamy. Napoleon assured me that she had never made use of such expression before him, that she had told him he was not worthy of being the son of the king. I observed that it had been asserted that he had offered to give Ferdinand one of his relations in marriage and make him king of Naples, to marry other of his relations to Don Carlos and to grant him a sovereignty. Napoleon replied, all those assertions are false. Ferdinand himself repeatedly asked me to give him one of my relations in marriage, but I never asked him. I said that in a publication of great circulation, it was broadly asserted that he had given Ferdinand the choice between the abdication and death. That in consequence of this and the threats of King Charles against himself and his followers, he had abdicated. That is also false, replied Napoleon. There was no threat made use of or compulsion. If indeed Ferdinand had been treated as I am here, or put to the torture, or deprived of food, it might be said that he was forced to do it. Your blank would willingly have put me to death, but finding that the nation would not consent, they set me here in order that I might die a death slow enough to appear natural, or in the hope that I might commit suicide. The fact is that had it not been for the quarrels amongst themselves, I should never have thought of dispossessing them. I said, in some of the publications against him asserted that he had been the contriver of the whole himself in order to take advantage of it afterwards. A man like me, replied Napoleon, is always either Dio or un diavolo, a god or a devil. It is as true as is the assertion that I brought over Pichegru and Georges to Paris purposely to ruin Moreau. When I saw those imbeciles quarreling and trying to dethrone each other, I thought that I might as well take advantage of it and dispossess as inimicable family, but I was not the contriver of their disputes. Had I known at first that the transaction would have given me so much trouble, or that it would have even cost the lives of 200 men, I never would have attempted it. But being once embarked, it was necessary to go forward.